Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Adrienne Dennenberg, Senior Director of Engagement Initiatives here for the Office of Alumni Relations. My colleague Diana is in the back. We greeted you out in the lobby. Thank you for making time for this tonight. We're thrilled that our Young Alumni Advisory Board, a certain group of them, have pulled together really their contacts in getting different panelists and speakers out for really a life series. We did Career Changers last spring. Earlier, I think it was January, we did a event talking about your personal income taxes because it changed a little bit last year. And then tonight, obviously, talking about the side hustle. And we have 3 great examples tonight who will speak to their experience and take some questions in a little bit. I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware, in case you're not already, of our new online community and news source. If you think of how great LinkedIn is to connect with people, this is a way to connect with people in Northeastern. So if you haven't signed up yet, don't have an account, feel free to pick up one of these cards or one of these really cool business cards that you can look at the link at the back. If you have trouble logging in, you can always call our office and we'll make sure you get hooked up. You can meet all kinds of people globally that are all connected to Northeastern. So we're initially rolling out to seniors this year, so you'll be connecting to almost graduated alumni, as well as alumni from all decades, all over, like I said, all over the globe. Tonight, thank you to our panelists for being a part, and I'd also like to give a shout out to YAB members that are here, our Young Alumni Advisory Board, if you can just wave. So we have 3 or 4. And our moderator tonight, Katie Wong. I'll bring her up to the podium and she can start us off. Thank you again.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Wong, as Adrienne mentioned. I am a member of our Young Alumni Advisory Board, and I graduated from Northeastern University in 2016 from the DeMoore McKim School of Business, and I actually recently just started a new job at Liberty Mutual, and that's what I do during the day, and then by night I'm a baker as my side hustle. So first off, I'd really just like to thank our 3 panelists for joining us this evening to share about their side hustles and self-started businesses. Linnell, Jen, and Danielle, to start, it'd be great to hear about your background, starting with your time at Northeastern and to what you're doing today, including how you started your side hustle or your business and what inspired you to do that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linnell Emerald. So I'm currently a full-time digital marketing consultant. I'm going to be a little different than the other 2 on the panel today because I actually am not doing a side hustle. I'm doing it full-time. But a lot of people who do what I do it as a side hustle. So I'm happy to speak to both sides of it and know why some people choose to do one thing or the other. So going all the way back to Northeastern, I was a communications major when I was here, and I was convinced I wanted to be a journalist at the time and went through a million different things I wanted to do. Tried all different co-ops, and my last co-op was probably the most impactful. It was working for a tech company called HubSpot, which a lot of people know now, but it was very small at the time, which is funny to think back to. And when I was working there, I fell in love with digital marketing, and the culture there was really cool if you know anything about the company. And I was like, oh, this is what I could actually do full time. I realized I loved analytics, I loved data, I loved diving into things. So I really found more of what I wanted to do full time. When I graduated, I actually kept in touch with a lot of people from HubSpot, which ended up still impacting me, and I still keep in touch with so many of them, and they're mentors to me. But when I went to graduate, I decided to work for a HubSpot customer who is based in Boston. It's a local jeweler, and I was working as their digital marketing manager. So when I was working there, I started to learn different digital marketing tools. I taught myself all sorts of things like their paid marketing channels. I started learning Facebook ads, Google ads. My boss kept approaching me and said like, oh, I heard about this AdWords thing. Maybe you should try that. I didn't know what any of these things were, so I went in, tried them all, really taught myself everything, and then around 3 years, I was feeling like, okay, I'm really good here. I've learned so much. I've grown so much. And around that time, I started reconnecting with a lot of my old HubSpot friends who were really good mentors to me. One of them in particular had actually started this side hustle as a digital marketing consultant who then turned it full time. And she was like, Linnell, you actually have a very similar skill set. You now know how to do all these paid social ads. You now know how to do all these search marketing ads. Have you ever considered doing this full time? And I was like, no, you're crazy. I would never do that. I am very comfortable with my 9 to 5. I love being here. I love clocking out and like not taking my work home. This is great. And the more I met with her and the more she started talking about it, I said, I have always wanted to start my own business. I've been here for 3 years. Like maybe I should start to consider it. And as I spent more time with her, I got buy-in from friends, from my boyfriend at the time, my family, and it kind of became this universal decision that I was just going to go for it. So I decided not to do it as a side gig, which I can get into later why I decided not to do that. And I just stopped cold turkey and I said, let's give it a shot. So I decided to start my own digital marketing consultant agency of one person. And I gave myself 6 months and I said, all right, I have enough saved for 6 months. I think I know what I'm doing here. I know the skills, the business side of this. I guess I'll learn along the way. I'll figure it out. And if I can't make this work in 6 months, I'm just going to go and get another job. And I'm 3 months into it, or 3 years into it, sorry. So things went well. And I kept doing it. So that was great. So I've learned a lot along the way. So basically what I do full time now is I help all sorts of businesses generate leads and customers for their business through paid marketing channels. So Facebook ads, Instagram ads, all Google marketing, things like that. So I roughly work with 3 to 5 clients at any given time. So I differentiate myself between a large agency that has lots of clients, and then I differentiate myself between people doing it as a side gig because I do it full time. I'm available full time, and I've really mastered kind of how I pitch myself in that capacity. So that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Glynn. I am a 2012 graduate of the College of Science. While at Northeastern, I studied both psychology and elementary education and was involved with a number of programs that supported kids in the local Boston area. And it was very clear to me as I began to look for jobs after graduation that I wanted to stay in the field of education somehow. And that led me to accepting a position with Teach for America, where I moved out to Chicago for a couple of years and taught 3rd grade on the West Side. And while in Teach for America, I received a good deal of instructional coaching, which is great because working with kids is really hard, and being a first-year teacher is very challenging. So in those 2 years, I received support and ongoing feedback from someone who knew my classroom, knew my students, and knew me really well, which was great. So when I came back to Boston, I realized that I wanted a school that had those same priorities and values, which is how I landed a position with Match Community Day School, which is an elementary school of a K through 12 charter where we support, I think, 2,000 students around the city of Boston. My second year at Match, which was in 2015, I realized that I wanted more professional development, particularly around my math instructional skills. So I sought out some different opportunities in the area and was connected with Edvestors, which is a local nonprofit that works to connect educators and schools with people who have means to support educators in schools. So I was a part of the inaugural Zeroing In on Math cohort of teacher fellows, where we spent a full year thinking about what was going well with math and science instruction in the city of Boston and what we could do to improve. My working group and I came up with this grand theory that is not shocking, but when people receive coaching, particularly teachers, they become better. And it's a wild thought. And I reflected fondly on my time with Teach for America and thought about my support that I receive at Match, where I'm coached every single week, have an ongoing debrief. Everything feels like it's progressing in this very linear manner. And compared that to my peers who were working in Boston Public Schools who received no coaching and were observed twice a year purely for evaluative purposes. So not only were we seeing this massive differential between what we were receiving, we were also seeing that the data of actual student outcomes and assessments was widely varied across what the students at Match High School were doing versus the students at any given Boston Public High School. So my co-founder, James, and I, who were just becoming friends at this point, came up with the notion of do-it-yourself coaching, which is a tool in which teachers videotape themselves teaching and then watch it back. Very similar to how football players watch game tape, our thought is if you watch instruction from a removed situation where you can really closely analyze the questions that you're asking, the responses students are giving, you can identify pretty quickly things that are going well and things that are holding your students back from success. So James and I kind of pulled this out a little bit more. Edvestors very generously furnished us with a $10,000 seed fund grant So we took DIY coaching and brought it to 8 teachers and asked them to simply film and watch themselves. And then as the year went on, we progressed and ramped up so that they were sharing videos, lesson plans, student outputs with one another to coach and support each other so that students would continue to succeed. The following year, we were awarded a $30,000 honorarium, which then enabled us to work with 30 teachers, and things have just continued to grow and grow. So at this point, we are supporting 120 teachers from across the school district here. We have a partnership that's fledgling in Philadelphia and are hoping to hear good news from Los Angeles Unified School District. So this has been a really exciting progress because we're working with a shoestring budget, to say the least, and we're working with teachers who work more than 40 hours each week, but they've made a commitment to support their students and to continue to improve their practice. So I'm excited to share that at this point we are positively impacting over 5,000 students in the city of Boston with plans to continue to expand.
Awesome. How do I follow that? Hi, my name is Yella. I graduated with a degree in political science in 2013. I came to Northeastern and chose political science because I really wanted to be a lawyer. And then thanks to the CoOp system, I worked at a law firm and then promptly decided I did not want to be a lawyer. So then I kind of dabbled around in some other things, a lot of international development and politics. And as I was, getting closer to graduation, a lot of the jobs I was looking at that I found interesting would require grad school, which I just didn't want to do yet. So I was like, I'm going to get a job. And the first one I found that I liked was in finance. So wildly different than what I thought I would be doing, but I ended up liking it. And I stayed for about 5 years at between 2 firms. I started at Standard & Poor's, the big rating agency, and then I moved over to another firm here in Boston, Columbia Threadneedle. And I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't wake up every day being like, I don't like doing this, or my soul is dying, or anything like that. But I was a bit creatively bored, and I had, some time on my hands, and I went to brunch a lot. So, like most millennials, I started taking pictures of my food and posting it on Instagram, and ended up growing a following. And through kind of researching different, social media marketing strategies and new photography skills and different ways of writing that can impact an audience. And I kept seeing really awesome leaps and bounds in growth, and it became kind of its own side business. And then through that, I was actually able to use the skills that I built there to make a career change about 1.5 years ago into social media, as a social media director for Mel Robbins, who is a daytime talk show host. We just launched 2 weeks ago, so it's still a little weird to say. But prior to that, she was the #1 female motivational speaker in the world, and a best-selling author. And so that's where I've been for about 1 year. Still have Boston Brunch Guide, and then the new career as well.
Great. Linnell, going back to what you were saying, can you talk about your decision-making process to become a consultant full-time and why you chose this path versus testing it out as a side hustle first?
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot in terms of when people in my field, whether they want to do it as a side hustle or take it full-time. I was back and forth about this. I was like, maybe, it felt much more comfortable to start and get a few clients under my belt while I was still working full-time. And I recommend different situations for different people. I was extremely fortunate that I had my husband to support me, that I had friends to support me, that I had saved up enough that I could go full-time. Some people don't have those same resources. And along with the kind of business I was launching, I didn't have any overhead. Basically, I was working from home. I didn't have a retail shop. So it was pretty low risk for me to go full-time and do this and try it out. Everyone doesn't have that luxury, and I always try to have this conversation with people because, people are always asking about insurance. That's always a big concern and a legitimate concern that you have to pay for, and other things that come along with owning a business or starting a business. So there's nothing wrong with, starting and getting clients, and then when you feel comfortable going off on your own, if that is something you're considering. The only thing I was worried about was burnout. I was worried that I was working 40 hours and then I would have had to put in all of my nights and weekends into the same exact job. which is something that my mentor had struggled with. And I was also concerned about that because when you get home, a lot of times you want to shut your brain off. And I just felt like there was not going to ever be that opportunity. So there's definitely a lot of factors that go into it. Do I want to do this full time? Do I have the resources? Do I have the support? It's definitely a comforting feeling when you go into it already having a few clients under your belt when you decide to go cold turkey. So there's a lot of different factors and reasons why I would recommend one or the other for every particular person.
Mm-hmm. And then for Jen and Danielle, have you considered doing your respective side hustles full time, and what factors do you consider when thinking about this?
So I weirdly ended up doing my side hustle full time just for somebody else. And the burnout thing is very real. I think there's elements of what I do with Boston Brunch Guide that I would love to do full time. Like, I absolutely love photography. I love writing, like travel writing or, restaurant writing and things like that. And I think I would maybe consider doing that for someone else, but I don't think I would want to do like the Instagram full time. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
And in a dream world, yes, I would love to do this full time. I think what's challenging is that budgets are pretty stretched in the field of education in particular. And when we're thinking about schools not being able to provide for instructional coaches, which is why this program came about, it would be hard to really make sure that we had a steady stream of income. We had the metrics able to prove the impact that we're having. And we're working really hard to figure those out. If anybody wants to discuss later, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So hopefully someday some incantation of DIY coaching will be able to furnish a full-time job for myself and other people.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then for Danielle, do you consider yourself an influencer and or content creator? I think today it's really interesting where we have Instagram, we have Facebook, etc., where you can create a business off of people that follow you. And I think this is a pretty recent phenomenon. And so what do you recommend for people who want to take this sort of path?
Yeah. And it's funny, we were talking a little bit earlier about just like the word influencer, and I don't like it. I think because of the recent phenomenon and everything that's come around with it, it gets a little bit of a negative connotation. So I think I really resonate more with like content creator, because I didn't start this to go out and be like, I want to get free clothes and get a bunch of people to, buy this product on my page. Is like, I just really loved going to restaurants. I loved finding, unique drinks and foods and interiors and sharing them. And in the capacity I work with brands now, it's things that I'm like truly interested in, or a project that's going to be creatively challenging or force me to learn or get outside of the box. And I think that when you look at people who want to be influencers, I think I read a stat a few weeks ago that like 50% of kids now say they want to be YouTubers when they grow up.
They do say that.
Which is a bit frightening. But I think there's a difference between even like the kind of content that I consume. You can tell people are doing it and they really love it, and Instagram is just like another tool, or their blog is another tool to do the thing that they love. And then the people that are just kind of checking the boxes of like, all right, well, I posted 10 style outfits and now I'm an influencer. And there is a difference between that. So I think if anyone's interested in like starting that way, I would really recommend like focusing on something that you truly love and like you would be doing if no one was watching. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where you'll find the most success, because that's kind of how influencer marketing evolved. If you think about it, it originally, like, this wasn't a job. It wasn't something people paid for. They just had blogs and they wrote about things they liked and grew a following that way. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, great. I think one of the most difficult things about having a side hustle or your own business is knowing where to draw the line between work and life. And so how do you maintain balance, boundaries, priorities?
It's a big question, I guess. People often ask me, like, how do you know when to shut it off? To be honest, it's not easy. I am very much, like, on my couch with a laptop all the time, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, because I have to self-reflect and be like, all right, like, I actually need to put the laptop away and focus on my home life. It's a very blurry line, especially when you work from home and don't have like an office to go to. One thing that helped me was when I was able to establish like a real office space. A lot of people have this notion of like, I'm going to get dressed up and do my makeup, and I'm not one of those people because I can be productive like in my PJs, just waking up and rolling over and going to my office across the hallway. So everyone functions differently, but it's extremely important, and I'm still not great at this, and everyone I know that does this who's a freelancer is still not great. So there's no perfect way of doing this, and everyone's so different. But for me, it was making sure I really go to the office and I don't like sit on the couch all day. And I take that time at night, because if there's a few consecutive days where I'm literally working from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, like it's not healthy and it starts to creep up on you. So it's just kind of making sure you're self-reflective, knowing yourself as a worker, and just making sure you set those boundaries. Yeah.
With DIY, since we follow the school year, it's very cyclical and predictable as to when the busy times will be. So this summer, I spent a lot of time trying to get ahead of the work that I knew was going to be all-consuming in August and September. And this winter, I'll think about what I need to do to make sure that we close the program out efficiently in June. I also feel very lucky that I work with 4 wonderful educators who are close friends and people who are deeply committed to this work. And we have very honest and transparent relationships with each other about when things are going well and when things aren't. And we're able to lean on each other for support, both professionally and personally, as needed.
Yeah, I've definitely struggled with this a lot, because I think when I started, I just kind of like said yes to everything and then got super overwhelmed and then was really spacey about it. And that's obviously not what you want. So I think there's been 3 things that have really helped me. One is like I live or die by my iCalendar, and I schedule in like, they're not actual like things I have to do, but I make sure I schedule in time of like, all right, I know I have to take this photo today and it's going to take this much time in prep work. And then even like blocking out like closed hours, like, nope, I am watching Netflix and I'm not working and I'm not feeling guilty about it. And then another thing that I do is when I kind of have like a free day, I sit down and I make a list of what do I need to do today that actually makes me feel productive, and then what else is like just would be great. And then as long as I hit those like top 3 things, then I'm like, all right, you don't have to feel guilty. Like you don't have to feel like you didn't do enough today, which I think is something that a lot of people with side hustles feel like, that we should constantly be going. And then learning to say no to things that didn't align with my goals or my values was huge, because as I said before, I said yes to everything. And it was definitely a hard skill to learn, but it's been something that's been made maintaining those boundaries a whole lot easier, for sure.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me, is like setting aside that time and being like, this is for me and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. So how would you say you measure success for your business or your side hustle?
Money. Well, for me, it really is, a financial thing, but also just a regular stream of clients where I feel like I'm not extremely overwhelmed, but still making an amount that I'm comfortable with. And actually along that line, making sure you're saying no to the wrong opportunities, and seeking out the opportunities that are actually going to propel your business in the correct way has been honestly one of the biggest learning lessons that I've experienced, especially this past year, is kind of purging things that just are not working, taking advantage of things that are working. And that's going to get you to that level of success, because when you're bogged down by clients that are not right for you, that are draining your time, that's really when you start to become overworked, unsuccessful, things like that.
I think for us, something that's been exciting is that of all the people who are enrolled in DIY coaching this year, 85% of them came from a referral through a past participant. So it feels really exciting to see that this is coming around. We got a message from the new superintendent of Boston Public Schools inquiring about the program, which felt very exciting. So just the idea that this is getting kind of spread to the masses in a very grassroots way. I also feel excited by the reports that teachers are sharing with us directly through feedback forms and through suggestions to strengthen and revise the course, and just hearing the impact that they've seen this have on their own instructional practice, and how after doing something the same way for 10 years, they've shifted it and pivoted it, and here have been the outcomes for students.
For me, since it is based in exploring creativity, that's kind of a big mile marker for me of like, I remember the first time I took my camera off of auto mode, and like that was a big thing for me, first measure of success. And then continuing to grow the follower base. I'm not like tied to like, oh, it would be awesome to get to like 20, 30, 40,000 followers, whatever. that's not how I measure the goal. It's kind of just a way I look at like, okay, the content I'm creating is resonating with people, or I'm getting a lot of messages today about this, and just making sure that it's still something that's fun to me and something that I want to be doing and that I'm learning from. And as long as it's still that and it doesn't feel like a burden, then I think it's successful.
So what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about starting a side hustle or their own business? What were some of the most important things that you did to create and grow a viable side hustle or business?
I would say number one is make sure you understand where you fit into the market. A big lesson I had to learn was how to pitch myself against big agencies, which are my biggest competition when I'm trying to compete to do these things. How I'm different, how I justify my prices, and how I differentiate myself between someone doing it as a side gig. So I really had to carve out this new space for myself, determine really where my value lies, and be okay if people say that's not right for me. And at first it was like any business, you take whatever and like whoever comes your way, because I'm just trying to make it. And really, once you get to that point of, okay, yes, I've like taken whoever and whatever came my way, how can I start to refocus and be like, what is right for me and what's right for my business? And making sure that you pay attention to that and say no to people. Yep.
I would say seek out mentors in the field, people who've done things very successfully, and almost more importantly, people who have failed miserably, and figuring out what it is that held them back from success and what they would have done differently. There's a project in Denver called Project Cam Opener, which was essentially DIY coaching, but on a massive scale. They had 600 teachers and inflated from 0 to 600 over 2 years and then popped. And the people who ran Project Can Opener were very, very candid with what they would have done if they had had the opportunity to restart again. And from all of their learnings, we were able to establish a program and grow in a way that has made this a very sustainable model, and one that we think we could scale to that point, but with more ongoing success.
Yeah, I would first suggest choosing something that you're really passionate about, or something that you're naturally intellectually curious about, because that's going to keep you going when it's cold outside and you're tired and you just want to blow off all the obligations of your side hustle. So I think that that's something that's definitely kind of helped me maintain consistency. I think another thing is also along the lines of mentors is like networking. Like find people that are doing what you want to do and like ask them to grab coffee, or ask them like a very specific question that you want to find out, because a lot of my friends and a lot of the people that I've learned from have been people that I've just admired, and I've reached out and I'm like, do you want to go to brunch? Like, I'd love to talk about like how this happened. And who says no to brunch? So it's worked in my favor a lot. Sometimes people say no. I don't understand it, but so that's been really helpful. And then another thing that's been like probably the best thing is all of the free resources that are on the internet. And this is probably for a lot more like creative things. Like Udemy has like a $10 class in Lightroom, and that's been great. The Boston Center for Adult Education has an awesome photography class that's like 6 weeks, and it's like $200, and it's an absolute steal, and you learn a ton. And there's so much of that stuff out there, and it's so accessible to us now that it can almost be a little overwhelming. But if you pick and you look at reviews and you schedule in the time to do it like an actual course, like you can learn so much for like very little money. But then also make sure that you're investing in yourself, and like if this is something you really want to do, like it's okay to spend the money. It's okay to spend $50 on a course, or it's okay to like start to look at new cameras if it's something that you can afford, without feeling guilty of like, oh, I don't need this because it's for my side hustle, it doesn't matter. But it's like it's investing in you, and that does matter.
So what would you say have been your biggest challenges that you faced, and what's something that you wish you would have known when you were doing your side hustle or your business?
I was kind of talking a lot about this earlier, but learning to say no. I think you start to get that knowledge, and when you meet someone and they show interest, how do you say no in the right way? What's right for you? And I think that was honestly the biggest learning lesson was even up to this year, there was clients that would bog me down. And I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how and the relationship, and it can really start to take a toll on you emotionally. And also, like, very similar to what we've been talking about is carving time out and not working 24/7, which is very hard for a side hustle because you are coming from that 9 to 5 job, and then you're doing your thing on the side, but just really finding that work-life balance. I haven't always been perfect. Everyone I know in this field hasn't been perfect. But really it's important in our culture as we're all getting like experiencing burnout. It's a very real thing. So just making sure that you can balance everything correctly. You make priorities. You make time for the priorities in your life as well. Your children, your husband, your whatever is in your life is also a big learning lesson for me.
Something that I found is that while I feel very passionately about this project and the people that I work with feel very passionately, that can be hard to transfer to someone who's just hearing the logistics of it. Like, oh, you want me to videotape myself teaching and then watch it. And that's just a terrifying concept in reality, right? So getting people on board initially, and then also communicating what it is that we do and why it is so important to people who are outside of the field. Education can be a very positive but also very insular community. So figuring out a way to translate the messaging of what we're doing in a way that is very digestible and very exciting to people who work in alternate areas.
I think probably the number one thing I've struggled with in doing Boston Brunch Guide is like heavy dose of imposter syndrome and like, who the hell are you to be doing this? Like everyone on the internet is doing it better. Why are you trying? And I still face that from time to time. It's definitely a lot better because now I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing it on my own and I'm figuring it out and I'm learning. And that was a big thing. And I think even for like the first 2 years I was doing it, I told like no one. Like I was just this like anonymous person on the internet posting photos of eggs. And because I was scared to kind of like attach myself to this thing that I wanted to do and what that meant and what people would think. And I think I wish I had gotten a lot clearer a lot earlier about like, no, this is cool and I'm going to do it. And if they have something to say, that's their problem. It's not on me. Because that's when I have actually been able to like really step up and like get out of the box and try all these things and be like, no, sorry, like I can't meet up this weekend. I got to go to brunch, which is a funny thing to say, but it is actual work. So I think pushing past that has definitely been a challenge and it's still there. Like I'll still look at my photos and be like, ugh, I hate how that turned out. And then someone else will be like, I love that photo. And so it's kind of funny. We're our biggest critics, I think. But I think also in getting past that point of investing in myself rather than like viewing it as like, oh, this is just me spending money on things I don't need to spend money on. Like, no, it's an investment in something you want to do. So don't feel guilty about it, if obviously within reason. But yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think some of you touched on this a little bit, but what experiences would you say, including any at Northeastern or past jobs, current job, would you say have been most helpful or informative for you in your career path?
Well, the obvious one for me is the mentors that I kept in touch with at HubSpot, but one of my past classes was just instrumental in terms of my capstone and just getting me to think in a more data analytical way. And yeah, just the co-op system. I mean, it's amazing. You learn what you don't want to do and what you do want to do, and all those things, as you guys all know, come back and help you long term.
Yeah, similarly, there were a number of experiences that are ongoing in my work as a teacher that have helped me see the importance of feedback. But I think Northeastern as a whole just drilled into me the idea that it's okay to not be perfect at something. In fact, you really shouldn't be, and you should be open to whatever support and guidance people will provide to you. So just that notion that everyone can and should get better. And it's exciting to see how that is translated into my professional life and will continue to support.
Yeah, exactly that. And also helping me realize that I didn't need to spend $100,000 on law school. I realized that I didn't want to be a lawyer. No, but in all seriousness, I think that the co-op program instills this idea that it's okay to try different things and like you don't have to know what you want to do from the get-go, and it's okay to change your mind and explore different things in different areas that you're interested in. And that's definitely been a big help in the rest of my life, actually. So
Great. And Danielle, you kind of mentioned about like resources that are available, but are there any reading, podcasts, resources that you would recommend that have inspired you in your side hustle or your business?
yeah, there's a bunch. I love How I Built This. I think it's an NPR podcast, but it's great. And then I paid for the masterclass subscription. It's like $160 for the year, but the content is incredible. I have no idea how they're making money with the people that they have on there, but it's really inspiring because like they have people from like Dan Brown goes through how he writes a novel and like very in depth and very granular, which is cool because you just get ideas off of it. And like Annie Leibovitz teaches photography, which is really cool content, and it's just really inspiring to listen to. So I think those two things have been pretty good.
Oh, yeah, podcasts. Podcasts, not so much for my business. But one thing that always really stuck with me, I had a past manager say this to me, and she said, take your learning upon yourself. No one's ever going to stop. I mean, people will stop and teach you things, but really your learning and your experiences are what come from within, and you need to take control of that. And that really stuck with me because I'm like, yeah, after college, there's no teachers. No one's really teaching us anything. Yes, we can stay stagnant in our job and kind of coast along, but especially in the field that I'm in, things are rapidly changing. So there's a few blogs that I swear by. I don't know if it's going to be super relevant if you're in this field. I'll give the names of them, but they're always on the cutting edge of what's next. Google's always changing. Facebook is always changing. Every day there's like a new feature, and if I didn't read up on those things, then I would quickly become irrelevant for my clients. So for me, that really resonates is take that learning onto yourself. No one's going to really be stopping and teaching me these new things. I have to stop and actively search for them, either whether it be podcasts or signing up for a class or subscribing to a really relevant blog. I have 2 that I have right in my inbox. The rest get filtered into like another filter because I can't read them all the time, but there's 2 that are like the ones I swear by. So I would say definitely find those few that really resonate and teach you what's new and exciting so that you can stay relevant for your clients, whoever you work with.
And I'm happy to talk about all things education, but that feels like a very niche thing. Find me afterwards if you're interested.
Great. And so before we open it up to the audience for Q&A, what is next for you in your business, your career, your side hustle? Yeah.
Just keep doing what I'm doing. I actually have no interest in really growing my business in any capacity. I always want to keep it a one-person operation. It's really like going back to how I say come up with your sales pitch and own it. It's really how I sell myself. You get me, you don't get anyone else, you don't get a team of people. Like you get me when you work with me. And I always want to keep it that way. And the exciting part is like as I've moved to the burbs, I was just talking about that, and like are going to start a family soon. Like the exciting thing for me is I'm always going to have this flexibility because of the job that I've created for myself. And I'm hoping to keep it up and be able to be flexible with my hours and who I take on. And it's just a really cool place to be in. So for now, just kind of keeping things coasting as is, trying to get clients when I can, the right clients. But yeah, no plans for expansion. So that's just my personal goal.
With DIY coaching, we are in talks with Boston Public Schools to become one of their teacher-led professional development offerings. What that would mean is that the program itself would be absorbed and run in-house, and my co-founder would likely have a full-time job within BPS to run this. As for me, I have a thrilling day lined up in 4th grade tomorrow. Happy to share more about that. To be determined what the next step is, definitely thinking about taking this experience of working with teachers directly and moving into more of an administrative role, perhaps principal, perhaps consultant, to be determined. But this has certainly been an interesting launching point, and I'm excited to see where it takes me next.
Yeah, I have a couple different things I'm looking into. I love the photography aspect of it, so I'm always looking to develop those skills and take on projects that kind of push the envelope there, and do things on my own and take more classes. And then also writing. I've been doing a lot of pitching for like travel writing, so not necessarily related to Boston Brunch Guide, but just getting in those publications and starting to build up that portfolio as well. So those are kind of the 2 things. And obviously continuing to grow the follower base. So if you want to follow Boston Brunch Guide.
Great. So now we will open it up to any audience questions. And maybe if you could just introduce yourself when you ask the question, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is David. I'm alumni class of 2011. My question is, how early in the process should you start investing money and setting up like the legal framework, trademark LLC, and all that in that admissions process?
I did it about a few months before I got started, and I hired an accountant, which was like the absolute best investment I've ever made in my business, because he just is my lifeline. I reach out to him all the time, and he really helped me understand in terms of like taking it full time, how to invest my money, how to set up either an LLC or I'm a sole proprietor, and he helped walk me through that. So I would say, if anything else, like if you know an accountant, or just get an accountant who can help you walk through those steps. But it's a pretty fast process, so you don't have to do it super far in advance. Do you guys have any?
Yeah.
But, and then, yeah, in terms of financing, like said, I didn't have much overhead, so I didn't actually have to worry about
One reason I was asking was that because if you don't know if the business will be successful,
right,
sometimes those things can cost a lot of upfront money. So maybe you don't want to go initially get all that set up. You want to prove yourself to a certain point before you do that.
Yeah, it's a little different with how I run mine, because I have very little overhead. Like, it's just a computer and me. So I didn't have to worry about a space. I didn't have to worry about investors. I didn't have to worry about any of that. So I can't really speak to like having to raise money and all that, which I know a lot of people have to worry about. But the accountant definitely was probably like the one hit I took, which ended up being extremely invaluable in the long term. And walked me through like an LLC. Okay, they can't sue me as a person, a sole proprietor, like I am my business. They walked me through all those steps. So for me, I just didn't understand that, and I wouldn't have the knowledge if I didn't make that one investment. But again, I didn't have like all these other factors to really take into consideration.
Yeah, I agree on the accountant front, because for me, I was like, the first brand deal I got, I had no idea what to do with, and then that was the first call I made. I was like, can I do this? Like, what's the tax situation? Is it free and clear? Or so that I agree. That's probably the best place to start.
How do you structure your time day to day?
It depends. I tend to go more like on a weekly basis. Like Monday nights are usually like my get back to emails time, and Wednesday mornings are for something else. And it depends on the week, because I do like to be somewhat flexible to like still have a life. But I think it's really just like figuring out what your schedule looks like and what works for you really well, and when you know you're actually going to do it. For me, Monday nights work because I just end up staying at work a little bit longer and getting some emails out. Whereas if I was like home, I would much more likely be on my couch watching Netflix than anything. So I think it's, kind of dividing out and like being really dedicated to that time. If you're a morning person, that's great because you can get up and do it in the morning. But I'm more of an evening person, so that's what works for me.
Yeah, likewise. We have certain standing meetings every single month, so I know that the first Monday is this, the second Tuesday is this, so on and so forth. And then based on the outcomes from those meetings, I'm able to map out how I spend my time based on my task list. So if I know I'm going out of town for a weekend, I'll try to be really creative with how I spend a Tuesday evening, knowing when I'm most productive. And again, just because we do have that luxury of being on the academic calendar, knowing exactly when things are going to be busier and when they're going to be lighter, and trying to reallocate and shift other priorities accordingly.
And my schedule is obviously going to be a little different. It's very open-ended. Every day is completely different, but the way I structure my entire week is I take, right now I'm working with 3 clients, so I'll take what I want to do with each client, and if there's specific projects I'm working on, I break them down into smaller pieces, then I break them down into daily schedules. I say like for number 1 client, I'll be working on like XYZ today, and I do like a little bit of each. I tried to like do Mondays for this client, Tuesdays for this client, but like it was just impossible because I'm in constant contact with all of them, and there'd be like fires I'd have to put out left and right. So it just like wasn't possible to do that. So every day I allocate like a few projects for each of them. So it starts here and then I break it out by 5 days. It's like how I keep my sanity. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ezgi, class of 2014. Really cool that we have a all-woman panel as well as a woman moderator. So in that front, how is it being a woman in the entrepreneur space? And if any, have you seen any challenges with those gender dynamics?
Yes. Sorry, like very bluntly, yes. There's definitely a lot of progress that needs to be made in that front. Whether it be me or other freelancers, I know there's definitely a different attitude that people have. Not everyone, absolutely not everyone, but it's very clear to me when someone has a different attitude talking to a woman. It's only happened a handful of times, but there's definitely progress that can be made for sure, and it's crazy that it still happens.
So how do you deal with that?
It's hard. I mean, the position that I'm in now, I'm at a position where I could say no to the wrong opportunity, the wrong person. So I just won't work with them. But there's also this aspect of a lot of women experience imposter syndrome, and it's something I still struggle with. And there's more confidence that comes over time that says, this is my pricing, and it's what I deserve, and it's what I know I deserve. And that honestly came with time and confidence and knowing that people are willing to pay that. It wasn't easy at first, so it's definitely tough, but it comes with time and confidence, I would say.
Yeah, in my field, it's largely female dominated, so I wouldn't say that there have been any direct competitors or things that I've felt in my role. However, I find myself reflecting a lot on how assertive or not assertive I am in conversations with funders in particular, and being able to prove our metrics of success and wondering what would this look like if it were a man presenting the same data. So, food for thought.
Yeah, I think anything around money has definitely been tinged with kind of that. And I've had experiences where they push back and they say you're not worth that much, and I'm like, well, here's the breakdown of the data that says yes, and then they'll pay it. But I don't know that a male influencer would have had the same kind of trouble. So yeah, it's definitely present in the industry. I think, and then on a personal level, how I speak out about how much I'm worth and how I view myself even. But I think it's also just, like you said, like going with experience, and that confidence comes with that. And then also just having like an awesome network of like-minded women around is great, because you can have these exact conversations and be like, no, like, you're right. Is really, really important.
A couple of you are involved with social media, and it seems so saturated now with so many people, and having to find your niche within that can be challenging. Do you have any recommendations for how to market yourself or make yourself stand out, or if there's any new ways to stand out among the crowd?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. I think there's a couple of strategies that go into it. What I do in my full-time job, so I run a whole social media platform for a woman who then we built a TV show off of it. And what went into that was like a ton of testing and audience listening and figuring out like what kind of content resonates and really thinking outside of the box, and getting inspiration from a lot of places. Like one of my absolute favorite Instagram accounts, and I'm not even kidding, is Spark Notes, because they do the best like memes of historical literature, and it's hilarious. And it's like they're just using social media so outside the box, and in an oversaturated market, it's those kind of things that resonate. And also I think a big thing is how much value are you providing? Like if you're doing it as a business versus an individual, like if you're doing it as a business, are you just there to have like another ad page for your product, or are you actually like providing value to your consumer? Because when you're providing value, people are much more likely to then invest, and they want to buy what you're selling because you've already given them so much for free. And that's also what we do in my full-time job, is that we provide so much free content that's actually really good and stands out and directly listens to our audience. So yeah, it's hard. It's oversaturated, and it's just going to continue to be like that, but it's really kind of finding the way to stand out, which is much easier said than done, but it can be done.
And I really only can speak from like an advertising perspective, because I don't really do much self-branding on social media other than LinkedIn, which is like an obvious one. I pretty much
have most of my accounts to private personally. But in terms of advertising, yeah, you definitely have to find ways to stand out because it's saturated. And with all of my clients, I'm constantly on the lookout for what's the next channel. Just a few years ago, it was YouTube ads. And I did it with all my clients and they blew up and they did so well. Now it's becoming saturated and they're not doing as well. So now I'm on LinkedIn ads. I'm like constantly thinking like, what's the next platform that they're going to stand out that's right for their market. And that's just, again, taking on that learning and understanding like what is the next newest thing. Because even within Facebook, like you can do some more innovative things. And I'm always constantly taking screenshots of things that get my attention because I really tune everything out as an advertiser. And so if something gets my attention, I'm like, okay, that was really impactful. Like, what was it about that? And I have like a little folder of all the ones that really made an impact. So just paying attention to and like actually recording what stands out to you.
You said you set the goal of 6 months for. How did you come up with that number, and did you reach your goal by 6 months?
I did, because I am 3 years into it, so very far past 6 months, which is great. So I took 6 months because that is just personally how much I had saved up for just like basic food and water and rent. And I was like, after 6 months, I need to get a job. But also it was enough time that I felt like I could actually prove myself because those first few months were pretty scrappy and I felt like it wasn't an accurate representation. Like looking back, I cringe at the first 3 months of my business, like what I was doing or like learning. And so 6 months I felt like was a really viable goal for me to be like, is this legitimate? Like, could I actually make this a full-time thing?
So it was based on your saving, you can live on your saving for 6 months.
Yeah, I was like,
but did you reach your, like, the salary that you were working in the company after 6 months, or no? Still you were?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, the interesting thing about doing a consulting full time is your salary is a little all over the place, which is like amazing when you're doing well, bad when you're not doing well. I was super lucky my first year that I made more than I did when I was working full time. That doesn't always happen. Some people start less and then the next year they get better. So it's completely dependent. But that's the cool and scary part about consulting full time is the amount that you can make is like limitless almost. I could work 100 hours a week, which I literally have, and make a lot of money, or I could work 10 hours a week and I still have a business and I'm not making any money. So it's pretty cool and extremely terrifying at the same time. I will be completely honest. Yeah.
For those who are like new to the side hustle, is there any like tips you can give in terms of like weeding out clients? How do you figure out if a client is good for you? And are there any like red flags that you should be aware of? And on top of that, if you find yourself in a relationship with a bad client, how do you break up with them?
I've done it. It's not fun. That's a great question. Actually, me and my mentor co-wrote a blog post for other freelancers about red flags to look out for. There's a lot of things that you'll learn with time, and it might be specific to the industry that you're going into as well. A lot of it has to do with the attitude. The biggest thing I learned is if they're nitpicking my pricing from the very beginning, it's not going to get better. If they're nitpicking every hour I spend with them, it's not going to get better. There's just some things that it's just the personalities. I've had personalities clash. I started doing with some people, if I was unsure, I would do kind of like a trial run of a month and see if like it was a good fit for both of us instead of like full blown, like let's do a 6-month contract. So I started like restructuring my deal in that way. I also I've restructured my proposal and my contract a million times, and it's like very specific now based on situations where I've been burned. And people are like, this is so specific. I'm like, there's a reason for a lot of this. And a lot of the situations, unfortunately, you kind of have to learn along the way. But I would say the biggest thing, if someone immediately is questioning you, is questioning your skills, is like giving you a really hard time about stuff, and not like there's a way to do it so that someone can understand if you're the right fit. But if you have a feeling that they're going to nitpick every little thing that you do, you're probably right. But yeah, I would say with any industry that might similarly be the case. Yeah. I don't know if you have experience with that too.
Yeah, and with working with different brands, I think after you kind of get past the initial hello email, like you can tell by their first response, like it's a little bit of a gut response, and that's come with learning because I've too have been burned by things, and now I think I just get as specific as possible, like almost to the point where they're like, oh wow, this is really thorough. It's like, yes, I have done my homework because I've been here before. And I think looking back, and hindsight is 2020, but the times when I really felt it in my gut, like I don't want to do this, but I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. I knew that it wasn't a good fit.
Always is that case.
Yeah. Or anything that just like for me personally, like anything that in terms of Boston Brunch Guide, like I wouldn't probably go do something for like a mattress company. I don't know. Maybe there's a way, but like it would have to be something that made sense within the terms of the brand and like who I am, and also the promise that I've made to the community. So
yeah, and I was gonna follow up and say your contract is going to be your best friend, because there are going to be times where you're going to unfortunately have to rely back on that contract, whether it be the scope of the project or to be like per our contract, which happens a lot. So definitely be specific. I'm sure, I don't know what kind of side hustle you're thinking about, but try to be as specific as possible with that, because I've definitely been burned by the vague language. And also I built in this new clause that's getting out of the contract within 7 days written notice, and a lot of businesses or agencies or whatever have to do like a 2-month notice, which doesn't leave me a ton of time to like recover the lost income. But I find that if you're at a point where either you want to let them go or they want to let you go, like you don't want those 2 months. It's like a bad situation usually, and it's kind of nice to have like a quick out from either side. So that's another like piece of advice too I'd consider. Yeah.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Vasa, class of 2011. I was wondering about your client, getting client strategy. So what did you find to be successful? Did you lean on your maybe previous clients? Did you go to a lot of networking events? Like how did you get clients to begin with? Because I think being successful after 6 months seems like pretty incredible and pretty quickly. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good, that's like the second question people usually ask me after like, how did it get started, is how do you find clients? And with everyone is completely different. I leaned on my network a lot. So I was extremely lucky. And also my previous employer, I was able to convert them into my first client, which was like right off the bat, just I wasn't expecting them to actually say yes. So that was like a blessing in disguise. And really a lot of people don't have that. So that was good. I do a ton of networking. And I just network with people within Boston because I find that those are usually better connections than someone in LA or in Toronto or something, because I can go to their office and meet with them. I actually co-host the Mass Professional Networking events around the city, so very involved in like the networking scene. Yeah.
So first question for Danielle, what's your favorite brunch spot?
Ooh, good one.
Hardest question of the night.
But so my question was actually partly off of the networking segment. So this is a recent concept that's been introduced to me, networking versus friend working, right? Like it's not everybody has a large network of people that they can sort of reach out to and ask to mentor them in the industry that they're interested in, right? So how do you sort of distinguish yourself from, reaching out to someone and sort of picking their brain and understanding how they got to where they are, and not sort of give off a vibe that, you have an ulterior motive of like sort of getting something out of them, as opposed to sort of, just having an honest conversation and breaking down the barrier.
Totally. And I always tell people, like, I never get a client from meeting someone cold at a networking event and then it just like, boom, works. That never happens. You have to pursue the relationship. So if I ever find someone that I just want to have, you always do the cup of coffee situation. Cup of coffee, I try to keep it light. I never sell or pitch myself. I just explain what I do. And sometimes even just having like an honest conversation, they're like, oh, okay. Like they keep me in mind. And sometimes I follow up with them like a few weeks later. So and then if you start to go to like the same networking event, you see them like often, and then they get to know you as a person. I would say that's definitely the biggest thing, because meeting at a networking event is very inauthentic to begin with. So I don't know how many like actual client deals happen at the initial networking event. It needs to happen afterwards. And there is definitely that like sketchy alternative motive, but it's more about like, hey, let's grab coffee. Hey, let's keep in touch, like checking in with them in a very innocent, like not like authentic way, where you just want to hear what they're up to, and not trying to sell yourself too hard, because that also never works. So it's very intuitive of you to pick up on. And also, like outside of like a traditional networking event, just going to events like this, like outside of Boston, where you would never, outside of those that you would never think that you would actually be like networking, seem to be really good too.
I do want to hear your favorite.
Oh yeah, your brunch spot.
Oh my god, okay. So it changes pretty frequently, but I'll give you like maybe top 3. I love the Gallows in the South End because you can also order a Blackbird donut, pro tip, as your appetizer. I love Trina's Starlight Lounge in Somerville, and they also do brunch on Monday nights, I believe. And then I also love Bootleg Special in the South End because the food is amazing and it's just like the nicest people in the world that are the owners. So yeah, top 3.
Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Linnell, Jen, and Danielle for joining us for today's panel. It was super helpful. You guys did so thorough with your answers, so really appreciate it. If we can just give them a round of applause, and then